If you've struggled with stress, balance, or burnout, and simply feel discouraged or even defeated, and if you're ready to move from force to flow and enjoy ultimate Zen success in your career, health, or relationships, then the Zen Success Show is for you. Your host, Carissa Sims, is an entrepreneur, corporate consultant, best-selling author, meditation teacher, and healer who has found her own Zen success. Here's your host, Carissa Sims.
Welcome to this week's episode of Zen Success. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Suzanne Smith. Hi, Suzanne.
Hey, how are you? I've been looking forward to this for months. It's been so much fun. And I love your podcast. So it's kind of a full circle that now I'm going to be interviewed. So I'm very excited about this.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking the time to join me today. And just for our audience, let me share a little bit about Suzanne. Suzanne Smith is a nationally recognized community strategist, professor, TEDx speaker, and founder of Social Impact Architects. A Duke MBA, she has spent more than 2 decades helping leaders tackle complex issues in education, poverty, healthcare, and workforce development. Is that all? No, I'm just teasing you.
I do
It
think that
feels like what?
I am a true Jeffersonian. So let me give you my 1 minute of the why behind that.
Okay,
So it's
great.
interesting how in the 21st century, everybody wants to say, this is who you are. You're a doctor, you're a lawyer,
Yes.
you're this. But in the early days of American society, you, as a founding father, as an example, Thomas Jefferson was an inventor. He was a farmer. He was a writer. And it's just been interesting how we want to put people in a box. And so I jokingly say I'm Jeffersonian and that I have a lot of things I do. And my job then is to build synergy among all of them. So to me, when I do a consulting project, then gets into the classroom, or when I, do a consulting project, I always joke with my clients, you may be the future example that I use in a blog post anonymously. And so to me, there's interconnections between all of this. There's a lot of synergy in the work that I do. I think to outsiders, they're like, is she crazy? Is she crazy? Oh,
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I can feel your passion, and I love the analogy how you connected it to our forefathers and Jefferson. Well, let me share a little bit more. She has also worked with government agencies, including the federal government, and is trilingual in government policy and business, giving her a rare perspective on how meaningful change happens.
mhm.
Suzanne is also the author of Social TrendSpotter, ranked among the nation's top nonprofit blogs, where she has analyzed philanthropy and nonprofit trends weekly for over 13 years. Wow, you must be so passionate about it. Known for her straight talk and storytelling, she helps audiences see what's really happening behind the headlines. So important. Learn why society's toughest problems are so difficult to solve and discover what solutions have been proven to really work. In her TEDx talk, Everyone Can Be a Changemaker, she shows how ordinary people can take small steps that create extraordinary ripple effects. Whether breaking down giving trends, unpacking nonprofit scandals, ooh, juicy. I'm sure there's a lot of that. Or highlighting, sorry, I shouldn't laugh. It can be devastating. Um, Highlighting community solutions, Suzanne makes the case that everyone has a role to play in making change possible. Yes, that's for all of you out there listening. Okay.
Right.
That is a message for you that Suzanne wrote. So happy to be here with you today, Suzanne.
I am so happy to be here too. And we could go so many angles based on that. And I know the intersection between you and I and all of our collective interests. So I'm anxious to hear what your first question is, and we can dive in.
Awesome. Well, I want to hear about you and your personal journey to where you are now and this focus and nonprofit.
It's interesting because I tell everybody that, I am a product of, my own ecosystem. So I grew up with my parents talking about social issues at the dinner table. So they were both school principals, teachers first. And we couldn't really come to the dinner table unless we had read the Dallas Morning News and we were going to talk about what was going on. And my dad, being the guy that he was not only a principal, but he was also a football coach. He'd flip it on us and say, "Okay, take the reverse side." And so,
Wow.
so we have our own entrenched view of a particular thing, and they're like, "Do the opposite." Like, what would be the negative part of doing it that way? What's the unintended consequence? So it's probably no surprise to any of my family members that I eventually got an undergrad in public policy from UT, which is where I get the policy background. Worked in the nonprofit space from really like age 15. I did my first grant when I was like 15 years old. And
Wow.
then
That's impressive.
eventually, yeah, I know. And then, worked at a city at the age of 16, and then eventually worked in the nonprofit space for a number of years, kind of in the first part of my career as a lobbyist, and then shifted and said, you know what, I don't feel like we're solving the social issues at the scale at which they exist, and was a little bit like, trying to figure that out, and was lucky enough that the organization I worked for at the time, the American Heart Association, who I just love and adore, and got so much on the job training from them and mentorship, sent me to a conference in New York that was run by Peter Drucker. And this was when he was still alive, but towards the end of his life, he actually shifted from for profit management to nonprofit management. And I actually got an opportunity to get a audience with him, which again, I was in my 20s, so I had no idea how big of a deal that actually was, because I was, just one of these people who wanted to make social change. And so we got to speak for about 45 minutes. And so I go through all of these things that I think about the world. And he goes, "You know what you are?" And I go, "Crazy?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "You're a social entrepreneur." And I go, "I don't know what that is." And he goes, "Well, let me explain it to you." And
Okay,
it's
how long
basically,
ago was this?
this was at least 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, it was 20 years ago. And this is why I love teaching young people, because I feel like I can get in that Peter Drucker moment where I can figure out where they are currently and kind of see where they could go and kind of help direct them. But I also come from a long line of teachers too, so I love teaching. And so he said, "No, you're a social entrepreneur." And of course, I didn't know what that was. I mean, so that was 20 years ago. So it was very in the early stages of social entrepreneurship, and very few people knew what it was. Now, of course, it's being taught across universities across the world, and it's one of the hottest topics in undergraduate business schools. And so I went and read the book that he recommended, Enterprising Nonprofit by Greg Dees. Ultimately followed Greg Dees to Duke, and he was there teaching, and just this huge thing opened up for me, where I'm like, oh my gosh, all of these tools from business can be properly translated into the nonprofit space. And so I've really spent the better part of 16 years post my Duke MBA taking everything I learned from the best and brightest at Duke, along with my own practical experience, and deploying it into the nonprofit space. As a consultant. So I do one-on-one stuff, but I also do coaching. I also do workshops and trainings across the world, freely giving away all of our intellectual property, because I really don't believe anybody sharing anything in the social space. And of course, teaching. And now I have this blog that I've been working on. And then we're turning all of this into my first book, which is going to be coming out soon, called The Nonprofit Flywheel, a playbook for sustainable growth, smarter strategy, and lasting impact. And it's going to be free of charge. It'll be a digital download. If you're like me and you like a printed version, you'll be able to go to Amazon and get that printed version. Of course, I'm going to get my mom and dad one, because they will not print out that kind of a document on their printer. But just, honestly, what I tell my students is, when you're doing your calling, you will never work a day in your life. And so I've just been lucky that I found my calling from a very early age 15. So
Oh my
that's a little
gosh.
bit of the
That's
story of the author.
amazing. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad I asked that. That's incredible. And you have such a youthful spirit. I mean, when you're saying 20 years ago and I'm looking at you, you still look 20 to me. Sorry. I hope I didn't offend you. I mean, I would say like late 20s, but like 28.
I will tell your listeners I did not pay her to say that. But
There's
here's
no
what I will say.
bribes. This was
This is,
ethical truth.
yeah, honestly, I will say my students are my fountain of youth. Like, honestly, that is what keeps me young. I'm going to be teaching them tonight, and I am constantly looking at my curriculum and figuring out, like, is this relevant? Is this interesting? And then the stuff they tell me in the classroom, it keeps me young. I also have stepdaughters who are in their mid 20s. They keep me young with all the cool jargon and what does 6-7 mean and all that kind of good stuff. So I have a feeling that that is my fountain of youth. Is just being around.
Amazing. Oh, I love it. I love it. So where do you teach?
So I teach undergrads and MBAs at University of Texas at Arlington. I
Okay.
also do a lot of exec ed, which these are people who are generally speaking mid-career, but they
Mhm.
can skew younger. They can skew, what I call second act, where they're in their second career. They've done for-profit, but now they've flipped into the nonprofit space. So I do exec ed for University of Texas at Austin, also University of Texas at Arlington, and then Duke as well.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing. I mean,
I
to
love it.
have your
I love
MBA
it.
and then come back and teach. I feel like that's such an honor for them to ask you to do that. Don't you feel that way?
I do, and I feel like I'm paying it forward because honestly, as I actually have a slide that I use with my class that I'm standing on the shoulders of all of the professors I had. So, certainly Greg Dees, who was the father, and I call him kind of the godfather of social entrepreneurship. He had passed away a number of years ago. So I'm passing on what he told me, but kind of like a new and improved version for the 21st century. And then Dan Ariely, who was a behavioral economist, who I still keep in touch with at Duke, my market research professor. Like I basically I'm almost like a magpie. Like I just heard what they said and now I'm passing it along and I'm kind of adding like my own special, essence to it. And that kind of hard won wisdom you get from practicing these things in the nonprofit space.
Yes, which is so important, it seems, to have someone who's a consultant and also, writes about it and not just a professor. That is so amazing.
The other thing that's somewhat unique is I've had again the luxury and just the luck where I've served in all the roles. So I've been a founder of a nonprofit. I've also inherited a nonprofit as an executive director and served in that role and had a board. I've been board chair. I've been on a board of a nonprofit. I pretty much have had every role. I've been the lowly person in the nonprofit space who's like the person who just started their career. So I also kind of can still flex in that way and remember what it was like, to be a 21-year-old in my first job in a nonprofit, my first day as a board chair, what did that look like? So I think that's the other thing that kind of makes me understand everybody's unique perspective and how I've also volunteered for a number of nonprofits.
Hmm.
I donate to a lot of nonprofits. So I kind of understand everybody's, connection point into nonprofits.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was an ergonomic consultant and I worked with nonprofits. And I'll just say, I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about nonprofits. It doesn't mean that the structure is not profitable. It's just a different way. It's still a business, which feel like your knowledge and expertise could be so helpful.
Yeah, I jokingly say I'm like the nonprofit myth buster, because there are all of these like things that people think about nonprofits. And, in their defense, nonprofits as a classification, the 501(c)(3 has
Yes.
only existed 75 years. So it's a relatively new concept. We're still trying to work out what this structure looks like, unlike government and business, which has been around almost since the beginning of time. Like people had businesses, there was some unstructured government or some type of community that came together. And so nonprofits is still a relatively new thing that we're trying to figure out. But you're right, like the whole, even just the name nonprofit, it's one of the worst named things ever. Like people
Oh,
hear nonprofit and they think no profit. And like, no, you can make a profit. You just can't go home with it. Um,
yeah.
and
It's
the
so
greatest gift
funny.
life can give.
Yeah, it's even
is
the
Girl Scout
people that
cookies.
run the organization or run the nonprofit. They are having, okay, so now I'm getting on an energetic level. They're bringing
Yeah.
on that frequency
Yep.
nonprofit. Hmm.
It is. And I was just going to say, just as a side note, like we're right in Girl Scout cookie season, and they're a nonprofit, yet they get a significant amount of their revenue that supports all the amazing things that the Girl Scouts program does just by selling these cookies. You know, the Y is a nonprofit, yet look all of the stuff that it does. And it does need that profit from the gym memberships, the
Hmm.
cookies, Salvation Army with its thrift stores to then push it back into their mission.
Mm.
And so I think that's one of the myths that I usually try to talk through with people is the fact that it's okay for them to have social enterprises. It's okay for them to have for-profit businesses that they then put back into the mission.
Yes, yes. So that's really inspiring and wonderful. And how do you, so that's one of the ways you help nonprofits. But how could you help a nonprofit that's struggling with fundraising or getting their message out to a younger demographic and just to encourage everyone to give?
Absolutely. Great question. And so you're going to get a sneak peek at the new book, Flywheel, because it kind of
Oh.
goes through this. And one of it is first, it's really understanding how nonprofits are sustainable. You know, so going back to the basics. And then I'll answer your better question. But let's talk about it at a kind of a generic level,
Mm.
40,000 foot level. So in the book Good to Great, there was a construct called flywheel effect. And most people have forgotten their physics class. So I'll explain what the flywheel actually means. So I want you to imagine like that first experience where you finally are um, able to ride your bike and you're able to like do really well at it and you're able to fly on that bike. Well, at some point you learn through riding that bike that you can take your feet off the pedals and the bike still moves. And it's through this concept called momentum, right? And you don't have to put work into it. Now, eventually, you'd have to put your feet back on the pedals, or if you happen to hit a rock or you happen to hit concrete, you're going to have to put your feet on the pedals. So, the flywheel effect is this idea that wheels kind of continuously move if you put effort into it, but eventually they should move of their own momentum. So basically, I took Good to Great and their construct around for profit, again, that proper translation of for profit ideas and their power tools that they have into a nonprofit construct. And our version of a product and service is impact. So at the end of the day, every person who wants to volunteer or donate to a nonprofit wants to know that that organization has impact. And
Yes.
so for us, that's our bottom line. Like we have to deliver impact. So as a Texan, I call that the steak. So we wanted you to deliver grade A steak. And so you have to talk about it. You have to measure it. You have to show that it's grade A steak. So that's tracking metrics. That's also better telling your story so people know how that mission comes to life. So that then leads to you deliver grade A steak or impact. That's not enough. Like you have to tell people about it. You have to say, look at this grade A
Yeah.
steak that we have.
Okay,
So
what I
again,
have to interrupt you for a moment. What if
yeah.
they're vegan? Because I know you're from Texas. That might be a bad word.
Right. On Zen Success, so maybe grade A tomato. Like,
Okay, just for an option.
like
Okay,
a
thank you.
hydroponic tomato that is like just perfect. Yeah, I grew up
Yes.
on a farm, so I know what a grade A tomato is versus the one you would get from a traditional
Okay,
grocery store.
thank you. So I just had to
So
interrupt for a moment. Thank you.
no, I love that. It was like so that's so right. As a Texan, I need to be thoughtful. I'll start using grade A steak or grade A tomato, depending on your interests.
Okay.
But that tomato that just you can just taste it and it like you bite
Yes.
into it and it's like an apple. It's so good. So then you have to shift and you can't just have impact after impact after impact without actually telling people, look at all this tomato or this steak that we have, come try it. So that's where nonprofits have to kind of think about how from the rooftops of their community, they have to talk about here's this great work we're doing, not only for clients who need to know about what you're doing, but also the community who may want to donate to what you're doing. And so the Jim Collins and the flywheel effect is very similar in the sense that if you have a product and service and you do a really good job of marketing, the revenue should take care of itself. And in the nonprofit space, my research that I've done shows that that is the case. And so organizations that I've worked with have doubled and tripled in size because they get impact right. So the stake and the brand, which is the sizzle, the stake and the sizzle, which is really critical. The revenue takes care of itself because people are like, then they come to you and say, how can I support you? You guys are doing such great work. I really would like to do something about it. And so, and again, you still have to do the work, but the work isn't as hard. Just like on that bike, you're not having to work so hard at that flywheel. So then, from a revenue perspective, you're able to put that extra money into operations, which means you can have the IT you need, you can hire the people you need. And then, of course, that's where it rounds up back to impact, where if you have the people you need in the IT, your impact gets better. And that's where the flywheel kind of glides together. Nestled in the middle is culture, which I think culture is everything. People talk about strategy being everything. I'm one of those people after COVID that I am a culture girl because I can give you a good strategy. I can't give you a good culture. And culture is one of those things during COVID in particular, in any nonprofit or any for profit, where it's what carried you forward because everything was kind of game over from a strategy perspective. If you had a good culture, usually your organization stayed together, for profit or nonprofit. And then governance. And governance is not just the boards you have, but how well trusted are you by the community? How much the people inside your organization trust each other? How much are you telegraphing to the community that you're a trustworthy organization, since trust is at an all-time low globally right now? And
Yeah. Now
so,
that's so interesting because I think a lot of nonprofits don't realize the importance of that.
so if you do all those things, that's the flywheel. So
Okay.
impact, brand, revenue, operations, nestled in the middle is culture and governance. That's what creates a sustainable organization. So a organization that just consistently rotates together, just like that bike, where you don't have to work so hard at getting the organization to move forward. It is moving forward on its own, which is really what any nonprofit wants. You don't want to be dependent on a founding CEO. You don't want to be dependent on any one person. It's everybody working together to move that organization together and knowing what piece and part is they contribute to and how everything works together, so that if you're not telling a good brand story, it's going to be hard for you to fundraise. It's going to be hard for you to fundraise if you're not measuring impact. If for whatever reason you do something that breaks trust with the community, fundraising is going to be impacted, as well as your ability to actually create strong governance and a good culture. So everything is interconnected. And so that's really what the book is all about, is trying to help people understand that it isn't any one thing. Because unfortunately, we as humans want to shortcut the process. We want the silver bullet, which I get. I want that too. There is no silver bullet to success. Like there isn't. It's a lot of things. So to now answer your question, let me pause and see if you have a
You
follow-up
actually
question on
remember what I asked
I did,
the double
because
question.
it is one of my top questions that I get
Oh,
from
okay.
nonprofits. They always want to
Okay.
start at that question before they understand the 40,000 foot level. So before I go to the actual question at the 10,000 foot level, any follow-ups to the 40,000 foot? And you
No,
tell
I
me,
just
do you agree
I
with the hypothesis?
yes. And I just have a prediction. I know this is not exactly about the 40,000 foot level, but when you come out with this book, you better be ready to
Oh,
shoot off like a rocket. I mean, you're already successful, but just you wait. This is only the beginning. I mean, your phone's going to be bringing off the hook, girl, with this book.
well, I
It's your
so appreciate
expertise all together. Yeah.
I so appreciate it. And honestly, I'm just giving people the book I wish I'd had 20 years ago when I
Mhm.
had that conversation with Peter Drucker. So all I am is a vessel. And like I said, I'm standing on the shoulders of a lot of people who, I am regurgitating, rethinking, trying to put it all in one place. So I hope that is the case. And again, it's never about me in the social space. It's never about a person. It's about the collective. And honestly, I think to your point, if that does happen, I'll be happy, because I do feel like right now we're living in a situation where people don't have hope around social issues. And
Yes.
I have lived in a time where, and you have too, where I've seen social solutions that actually work,
Mm.
so I'm dating myself, but I remember a time where I didn't have to wear a seatbelt as a child. I remember a time where, there were things like drunk driving. And during my high school days, they
Yes.
were trying to combat it. And I remember a time my first supervisor smoked during our updates. Um,
Sorry. Oh
but
my
it's
God.
true. Don't you remember those times?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get the smoking as much, but yes. I
But when
mean,
I talk to
definitely
my
drinking and
students,
driving, no
yeah,
seatbelts, craziness. Yeah.
yeah, and even just like recent history. I mean, I remember when no one talked about mental health. Like it was, you didn't talk about anything. And now, for the vast majority of people, it's okay to say you're not okay.
Yes.
And there is more of an openness to it. I say all that because I think that Gen X and Gen Z and um, millennials need to remember those generational differences. And you and I have seen social changes, Gen Z has not. And so it feels like the plight of humanity is falling apart, when in reality, it just takes time. It takes time for humans to change. It takes time for the evolution of human beings to happen. Do I wish it was faster? Yes. I mean, that was my cathartic moment 20 years ago. And that's why I've propelled myself the way I have. So this then goes back to your 10,000-foot question of like, how do I get more Gen Zers into my space, and how do I shortcut the process? So you can't shortcut the process of a sustainable nonprofit. It either is or
Okay.
it isn't. And you should always be working towards making your organization more sustainable. And there's no static state. So at some point, your nonprofit has external forces like AI that causes it to change. The big external force you're talking about right now is a values difference between baby boomers, and I'm going to use them as like the band over here, who believed in checkbook philanthropy, and there were less nonprofits. So they would hear about a couple of nonprofits in their community and they would write checks and they would volunteer. Gen Z, on the other hand, there are many more nonprofits because of all the stuff that's going on in the social media that constantly reminds them that the world is coming to an end, and the doom scrolling. They are a little bit more skeptical of nonprofits, and candidly, there are some nonprofits who have been bad actors, and so we are not as trustworthy, I think, as we once were as a class of entities. That we need to work on that.
Mm.
So they need what my students will call receipts. Like they need to know that you're doing your job before they're going to write you, and they're not even going to write you a check, before they Zelle you or
Or
QR
Ben.
code you money.
Yeah.
And a lot of Gen Zers also have a trust but verify view. Like they want to go volunteer for the nonprofit. So interestingly enough, compared to baby boomers, they have a higher volunteer rate, which is
Okay.
a good thing. And so they want to volunteer with you first before they're willing to give you money in whatever form they decide to
Oh,
give you.
interesting.
And so they want to know and they want to see it for themselves. And millennials are somewhat the same way. I would also say Gen X kind of falls into that category, where there's a lot of Gen Xers, depending on if they're older or younger Gen Xers, want to kind of see it for themselves as well, which is why it's even more important for nonprofits to have accountability and do impact reports, tell their stories, offer opportunities for volunteering. So, to your question around nonprofits and the nonprofit you were thinking about, I would encourage them to, one, start a volunteer program if they don't, so that people can see the mission in action, or do
Hmm.
some type of mission experience that people can see it for themselves. And it can be in person, it can also be virtual. So just so you know, like millennials and Gen Zers don't actually physically participate, as long as they see mission in action is what I call it. Mission in
Hmm.
action is really important. So even TikTok showing mission in action is important. Um, the other thing is to communicate to them in the way they like to be communicated with. So I was joking with a larger nonprofit who's been around for a really long time, and I got their letter and I was like, this was 2 pages. Like, I'm a Gen Xer. I don't even want to read 2 pages anymore. I want bullets and pictures and
Yeah.
infographics.
Put it
I've even
down to one
changed.
paragraph. I've
And so
worked
I
with
told
some
them,
of
I
the
said,
biggest nonprofits in the world. Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah. And so I think we also have to change our mindset. And so I'd encourage them to look at how they're communicating with the world and
Okay.
see if they're maybe a little bit more caught in the 20th century attention span world. The what I tell nonprofits, and this is true of even my students, 10 years ago, we were getting bombarded with 3 to 5,000 messages every day, which is a lot for a brain to absorb. I think the new amount is around 10 to 15,000 messages every day. So we literally have cognitive overload.
Yeah.
And so people just can't process everything they're being hit with. So you got to make it easy for them to process it and then take action.
Yeah, that makes
And that
sense.
probably would be a good solution for them. And we do talk about that in the new book, Flywheel, that, how to actually kind of shortcut that process. And we do talk about those generational differences and how to customer segment based on, you still need to write that letter for those baby boomers, but maybe make the letter a little bit more Gen Z friendly. Turn it into an email, turn it into a TikTok, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because I mean, that generation, I don't even think they use email.
Not really. I mean, I think they use it for transactional purposes. And
Yeah,
so honestly, you'd be better off doing a text or
the
doing a
text. Yeah.
TikTok. I only
Hmm.
use email because I think it'd be really hard for nonprofits to move away from email,
Oh,
because that's
yeah,
how they
totally.
track their impressions. But yes, I would agree with you. If you could not send emails to Gen Z, that's probably better. Um,
Yeah,
so texting and TikToking, I think would be a better way of going.
interesting.
Videos. Mhm.
Okay, got it. Got it. Thank you for that. All right. Well, I feel like we're just, it's so full. Like I just feel overflowing with this information. I want to talk about your blog. So, what inspired you to start this blog and what's the purpose of it?
So I really respond to customer feedback. And so the whole reason why I started the blog was because I had a client who said to me, every time I meet with you, you tell me all these cool trends, like I can't keep up. You should turn it into a blog. And this was 13 years ago before blogs were like a thing.
Yes.
Um, and
You
honestly,
were
it
on the
was like a
cutting edge, actually, probably,
Yes,
right?
I was. And I mean, I honestly, I look back at that first blog, and this just goes to show where you should just start and not let perfect be the enemy of the good. It was a terrible blog. Like it's nothing in comparison to what it is now, as far as the level of effort, the level of detail, the level of like strategy. But I did it and I started it. And 13 years later, like knock on wood, it's like one of the top social sector blogs on Substack. So we recently converted it to Substack when Substack became the thing. We were on Medium when Medium was the thing, and
Okay.
obviously on LinkedIn, and we syndicate across lots of different things. There's lots of people who take our blog and repurpose it for their community because again, we don't believe in intellectual property, and so I feel like imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So if someone takes it and uses it in their newsletter, great.
You're not going to sue
Um,
them. That's amazing.
no,
Yeah, you have a generous
no.
soul and spirit.
Yeah, the only thing I tell people is I said, if you make it better, send it back to me so I can improve upon it. So
Yeah.
yes. We started it 13 years ago, and honestly, it has helped me because it's helped me codify my thinking.
Okay.
It's also allowed me with students and with others to say, before we have a conversation, go read this blog. Like, for example, I had someone who called me this morning and said, my values are not working. And I said, okay, go look at these 2 blogs on values. And then when we actually had the conversation, she's like, oh no, it's not the actual written values that are the problem. We're not putting them into action. Help me put them into action. So it helps people kind of frame their questions to me of like, what is the real problem? Is it the words themselves, or is it that you have not brought those words to life? Um, so it helps me a lot to kind of get to the source of what their needs are. Like I said, it helps me with myth busting too, because honestly, one of the biggest issues we have in the nonprofit space is we don't define the words. So I've defined what impact means. I've defined what sustainability means. I define like every word, I have defined it so that way, at least every word that is out there in the nonprofit space, we all have a common definition of what it means.
Mm.
Um, So that's the other thing. And we haven't just adopted the for-profit definition as a default because oftentimes it works for us and sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's been a fun exercise. It also is good from a routine perspective. I do it every Thursday morning. And so that level of routine I've had in my life has been a very good thing for me. So yes, I love it. I would never not do it. I have my team every once in a while said, would you ever discontinue the blog? I'm like, I don't think I could at this point. It'd be like me discontinuing exercise or meditation in my life. Like I could not do that anymore. It's just such a part of who I am as a person now.
Yeah. Well, maybe if you get incredibly busy, but I know it's part of who you are and everything. You never know. You're like, no.
At some point that will happen. I can't imagine it in the near future because I love it
Right.
so much.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Maybe like 10 years or something like that. Okay. Anyway, I'm giving you some space and time. All right. Well, how can social businesses be both soulful and sustainable?
So this is also a big question I get right now. You're asking me all the questions I get the most often. So this has really been fun for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're practiced at all these answers. Okay.
So here's the thing. When I first started teaching corporate social responsibility, it was like, first of all, it was a big deal and everybody talked about it, but there was no way you could go wrong in it. It was this feel good thing. So, and now, since then, obviously, there has been changes in the federal level, the national level, the rollback of DEI and some of the controversy associated with that. There's also been companies who come out and are trying to do good, but then they falter for whatever reason. So the
Mhm.
Target Disney example are the ones that I always kind of put forward. So now I think the opportunity is for us to look at how can companies truly do good and have it be in their bones, to your point. Like it can't just be PR. Like I say, if you're going to do PR as CSR, you might as well not do it. So PR meaning public relations and CSR is corporate social responsibility. People can tell when it's authentic or not. And when you roll something back, it probably wasn't authentic to who you are, if you're willing to roll it back. And I always give the example of Herb Kelleher, who was the CEO of Southwest Airlines. This was back like 15, 20 years ago. And as you probably can appreciate, they had lots of different flight attendants, and the flight attendants, are a little bit like the old servers from TGI Fridays, where like some type of pizzazz was important, and so that he had a number of people who had a lot of pizzazz, including people in the LGBTQI community, who had a lot of pizzazz and had lots of funny little quips and a lot of kind of neat things, and they would dress, like with flourish. And he got an email from somebody saying, I see that you actually hire people part of the LGBTQI community. Again, this was like 15, 20 years ago, maybe even longer. And they said, I was offended by something this person said, and I feel like you
Mhm.
shouldn't hire these people, these
Oh,
people. And he basically sent a note back to this individual and said, I'm sorry to lose your customer as you as a customer, but
yeah.
this is who, and we will always back our employees and back who they are as people. And based on everything I've heard, the thing that person said was offensive to me, and so I'm sorry to lose you as a customer. I hope you'll reconsider, but I'm not going to change our policy on acceptance of people. um, and I just love that because it just goes to show, like, if it's who you are, it's who you are, and you're not going to please everybody. Like I learned that a long time ago. Margaret Thatcher said this: you can either be liked or you can be respected. You can't have both.
Mm.
Um, and so I think we're in this space in the corporate area where I think a lot of corporations are deciding who they truly are in their bones. And those corporations who have thought about doing good strategically, they're continuing to do that good strategically. And if they lose a customer here and there because those people are offended, that is their choice. That's that customer's choice, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's kind of where we are right now. And so it's become really treacherous territory for a lot of businesses. And so what we're seeing is an elevation from, and I think this is the right place to be, by the way, and I would have said this 5 years ago, where it's no longer, corporate social responsibility is no longer like a PR marketing thing. It's
Yeah.
now part of the strategy of the organization.
Yeah.
Like is this doing good or is it not? Are we going to have our environmental record or are we not? Are we going to treat our employees like they should be treated or not? And some of this is a function of us as customers saying, here's the bar I have, and I'm not going to frequent organizations that treat people this way or do these things, which again is the customer's choice. And some of it is a function of employees. So I'm getting more and more calls from HR directors because they're getting, you're going to love this, they're getting, questions from Gen X, Gen Z, as well as millennials saying, how do you treat your employees? How do you treat people? Because they want to work at places that
Yes.
environmental, social, and personnel record.
Mm.
And so when I talk to my students, they use this as a proxy for if they're going to treat the community bad or not care about the community, how are they going to treat me as an employee? Like if I'm just a widget and they don't care, then they're going to take away my health care or they're going to, do these things that are not right for me either. Um, so I do think it's an important area for people to pay attention to. The other thing, I've used a lot of big company names because people know big company names, but I just want to continue to emphasize good corporate social responsibility is not just a Fortune 500 thing. I'll give a quick example. I had a person who came to one of my training sessions 2 years ago, and he owns a franchise of a number of oil change places. So not a high roller or a large corporation. But he said, you know what, Suzanne, I really want to give back to the community. How do I do it? And so I said, well, why don't you ask your employees and see where they care? And a
Yeah.
couple of the employees recognized that there was a local after school program that was down the street. And so he went to the leader of that after school program. So think Boys and Girls Club, or you mentioned the Y, different
Hmm.
groups. And so they basically volunteered for that organization. They actually, gave, free oil changes to that, to their vans so they could easily have that. He went to his friends who owned other businesses, so gas companies as well as brakes. So basically, they pay for nothing related to their vans. They loved it so much. The employees now are volunteering in the after school program through mentorship, but also teaching auto mechanics to all the folks in the after school program. He now serves on the board of that organization and helps fundraise for the organization. During Giving Day, he actually allows customers, now I'm one of his customers because I'm so enthralled by what he's doing, to round up and to actually donate to that organization. And they have pictures on the wall of all the cool things they and their employees do for that after school program. And
Oh my
so,
gosh.
why wouldn't I support that place? Like that, oil change isn't a commodity. Like, let's be honest, you can go get your oil changed anywhere.
Hmm.
We want to go to places that have our values. And this guy clearly has his values, and it's not costing him any money to do any of this work. And actually, he would argue that he has more customers now who love all the stuff he's doing and loves the atmosphere. His employee retention is better because they know he cares about the community and cares about them. And so it's just been this lovely relationship. And it's not Pepsi or Southwest. It's
Hmm.
just a guy who runs a couple of oil change places on franchise, like he's a franchisee.
That's
Um,
amazing. I love that story.
like big or small, you should be doing good in the community and just start somewhere. Start
Yeah,
anywhere.
I
Give
love that.
back.
What is Zen success to you? Last question.
I think, I mentioned this earlier. I mentioned the word synergy, and I love that word. And I think unfortunately we talk about doing good, and sometimes people connect it back with only if I work within the nonprofit space can I do good. But the truth is, every day we're making choices around how we give back. And so for me, Zen success is really about everything in my aura, everything in my body, everything in how I telegraph to other people being in synergy. And so it's all the things I do. Do I put my grocery cart up when I actually do my groceries? Do I smile at other people when I go past them? None of those things cost any money. How do I live my values and do people see those values in the work that I do? So it's everything head, heart, and gut being in alignment. And
Mm.
that's how I live my life. And I would recommend to people, if they want to achieve Zen success, to really get that kind of values alignment between head, heart, and gut.
Yay! I love that definition. It's
Oh,
been
good.
such a pleasure getting to know you. I want to meet with you again, hearing about your amazing blog, your upcoming books, and I'll put your website in the show notes. And thank you for joining me on the Zen Success Show, Suzanne.
Oh, no, thank you for the offer. And I would just encourage people, to be an everyday change maker. Choose one thing and kind of do differently as a result. And so it could just be smiling at people. It could be, instead of doom scrolling, hope scrolling, and just I'm inviting them to be a change maker themselves.
Amazing.
That's it for today's episode of Zen Success. Head on over to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen to shows. Subscribe to the show and share with friends. Be sure to head on over to ZenSuccessShow.com to help you on your Zen success journey. And join us on the next episode. May you find your own Zen success in life.